Today, we're reviewing the crime drama 1922. Get ready for incredible plot twists. 1930. James, a former farmer, walks through the streets of the city. The city already has 3-story buildings, but cannot yet afford asphalt. On the streets, the gray-haired man pushes aside indifferent passers-by, immersed in thoughts of the great American dream, and heads for the local hotel. There, he rents a room and listens intently to what is happening outside the walls. You might think that he is curious about the love life of his neighbors, but in reality, it's much worse. Sitting at a desk by the window, the man begins to write his confession. Then the story shifts to 1922. James's voiceover explains that his father-in-law has bequeathed his wife 40 hectares of fertile land, which the experienced farmer plans to annex to his plot and later pass on to his son Henry. After all, in those decent and God-fearing times, a man's main value was his land, and his son was the best reason to be proud. However, his wife, who was fond of sewing clothes, had a completely different outlook on life. She could not stand living among the cornfields, where the highest achievement of tailoring was sewing clothes for scarecrows. Using her right to inheritance, the wife wanted to sell all the land to local corporations and move with her family to the city. Of course, this approach does not find understanding with the husband, who is used to working with his hands on his land. During a conversation over dinner, the son supports his father, which greatly upsets his freedom-loving mother. But her intentions are firm, and the lawyers and legal nuances are completely on her side. Leaving his wife in bed, James walks at night among his native spaces and decides to fight for his way of life. He suggests that his wife sell the inheritance not all at once, but in installments. But greed takes over. The corporation offers to pay the entire amount at once, and more than James can afford. The question of divorce arises, but the wife wants to keep her son. This completely contradicts James' worldview. The man begins to hatch a sinister plan. He is tormented by the thought that he has not only fallen out of love with his wife, but has openly hated her. James decides to use his son to his advantage. The boy is already showing interest in the neighbor girl, the daughter of more successful farmers. James convinces Henry that the mother not only wants to divorce them, but also to take her son with her to the city. This means a change of scenery, where the village boy will be a stranger and will be separated from his beloved girl. This simple thought penetrates the boy's mind. Without his mother, life will remain the same, simple, clear, and familiar. The father's sly speeches have an effect. The boy becomes distant from his mother. The matter comes to an open quarrel and physical abuse by his wife. But this is not enough. Then James resorts to a trick. He tells his wife that he has talked to his son and he has convinced him to move to a big city. Allegedly, there are more opportunities there. The mother will be engaged in tailoring, the father will repair cars, and the son will receive a better education. The woman believes this lie and agrees to celebrate family reconciliation. This leads to unpredictable results. The woman, having allowed herself to drink too much alcohol, tells her son in a rude and cynical way about the relationship between a girl and a boy and how to treat girls. The woman also expresses doubts about her son's mental abilities, as he has not yet been able to understand the neighbor's girl. Offended in his best and brightest feelings, the boy runs away from home. The father has to drag his drunken wife into the bedroom. Afterwards, the father and son, having consulted, decide that the woman not only does not understand anything about their complicated farming business, but also causes maximum losses. This leads to the realization of a long overdue decision to beat her. But this is done in the most ridiculous way possible. With the help of his son, the husband sends his wife to the next world. They drag her lifeless body, wrapped in a blanket, down to an old well. After throwing it down, they begin to carefully hide the traces. First of all, they wash away traces of blood wherever possible. Then, in order to avert suspicion, they imitate the escape of his wife, who is allegedly tired of rural life and has decided to run away to the big city. To do this, they carefully collect the best dresses, jewelry, and memorabilia. Then they dump all of it into the same well. Suddenly, James notices rats living at the bottom of the well. They are feeding on his wife's body. This sight is burned into his memory. For a long time, this image will haunt him in his nightmares. One day, a car with a lawyer drives up to the house. The stern and straightforward James is in no hurry to even shake hands with this man. Instead, he greets the driver who brought the lawyer without prejudice, treating him to cold milk. The lawyer has come to draw up documents for the sale of land, but since the owner is not there, it is impossible to do so. He has to leave with nothing. However, there is a lot of money behind him, so soon the local sheriff comes to James' house to make sure that the farmer is not holding his wife by force. By then, James realizes that he needs to carefully cover his tracks. He gets the cow onto the manhole cover so that it falls in under its own weight. To prevent the smell of rotten meat from spreading around, the farmer and his son cover the well with earth. When the sheriff arrives, James doesn't hesitate to let him in. Unlike the lawyer, who is a personal enemy, he does not want to quarrel with the local government official. The policeman carefully examines the house and rooms, but finds no suspicious traces. In the end, James even invites the sheriff to look at the well with the dead cow, but he decides not to traumatize his psyche once again and refuses. Soon, it's time to harvest the crops. To do this, they take the equipment of neighboring farmers along with hired workers. During a break, the neighbor's daughter asks James if his son is okay. He has become distant and very gloomy. The man tries his best to calm the girl down. One night in the barn, they hear the disturbing noise of cattle. A farmer with a lantern and a rifle goes to see what happened. He finds rats in the barn, the same ones that had crawled out of the pipe of the filled-in well. They are very harmful to the animals. In the morning, he cements the pipe, but the rats and hallucinations are not his biggest problem. Henry's son tells him that his girlfriend is pregnant, and they are both only 15 years old. On the one hand, this is not such a big problem in the countryside, but on the other hand, the girl's father, a successful farmer, is categorically against marriage with a poor boy. In addition, James himself, remembering his experience with his wife, is in no hurry to organize a wedding. He is also jealous of his potential father-in-law. He has a better house, a wife who doesn't mind, and a nice car. The girl's father arrives on a courtesy call to inform him of his plan. The girl will go to a Catholic monastery, where she will stay until the moment of delivery. The child will be given up for adoption, and she will return home. This will relieve both her and the boyfriend of the burden of family life. However, it will cost money. James is asked to pay $75, but he doesn't have even that much money. Henry is categorically against this development. He is serious and ready to take responsibility for himself and for his beloved and child. But James strongly disagrees. He is ready to pay for his father-in-law's plan in any way he can. To do this, he searches the house in search of his wife's money, who was preparing to open a sewing workshop, but still lacks cash. So he goes to town, straight to the bank. There he is offered not to take $35, but to take $750 at once, secured by real estate. Of course, with this money, the farmer will be able to repair his house and put his farm in order. But without losing any of his common sense, James refuses to get into a debt pit and walks away. On the way out, he notices a note in the car. Meanwhile, Henry has stolen another car and fled with his lover away from his parents to live his life. Left alone, James experiences bouts of hallucinations again. He sees his wife and blood stains in the drops of water dripping from the ceiling. As a result, he can't take it anymore and takes the mannequin to the basement. The next morning, the sheriff tells him that someone robbed a store nearby. The description of the robber is similar to Henry's, but some elements of his clothing do not match. James refuses on principle to suspect his son of crimes, but this forces him to mortgage his house for $750 to go looking for him. Just as he's about to leave, a rat attacks him, spattering the money with blood, making it suspect. Having regained his strength, James falls into psychosis, drinks alcohol, lies on the couch, and watches snowflakes fall on the house. He is tormented by nightmares and haunted by visions of his dead wife. Eventually, she catches up with her unfaithful husband to whisper to him what only the dead know. She tells him about the fate of their son. After running away with a girl, he bought a revolver with his last money and used it to rob several stores. But in one of them, when they were already running away, the owner came out with a gun and fired after them. The bullet caught up with the pregnant girl. Staying among the fields, Henry carried his beloved in his arms to the nearest house through the snowy fields. Hiding her in an abandoned barn, he went to look for firewood, but when he returned, she was already dead. Unable to bear it, he lay down next to her and shot himself with a revolver he had bought. All this information was not reliable until later. Frostbitten James, who had his left hand amputated, is told by the sheriff that the remains of a woman who looks like his wife, who was robbed while trying to get to Canada, have been found. Knowing the truth, the farmer agrees with this version. Later, the bodies of his son Henry and his lover are brought to the city. During the identification, James sees that the boy's face has been gnawed off by rats, just like the face of his wife, who was thrown into a well. The memorial service for the girl is filled with a full house of sympathizers, while only the father and the ghost of his wife with a retinue of rats come to say goodbye to Henry. James tries to sell his land to a neighbor, but after his daughter's death and his wife's departure, he doesn't care about the land. His father-in-law notes that they are ending this year in the same way, having lost their children and wives. When James returns home, he notices that the last cow that lived in the house with him has fallen off the porch and is lying injured. This is the last straw. He finishes off the cattle with a shotgun. As a result, he has to sell the land at a very low price and go to the big city, getting a job as a loader at a factory. But even there, he is haunted by rats. After living there for a long time, James comes to the conclusion that he should have done something differently, agreed to his wife's proposal to move, or at least divide the property and get a divorce. Having finished writing his confession, James turns to the wall. The rats have gnawed a hole and are now climbing in one by one, and in the middle are the ghosts of his wife, son, and son's fiancée. James, holding back his tears, patiently awaits his fate, realizing that he fully deserves his punishment. Thank you for being with us. Subscribe to the channel, like us, and be sure to click on the bell to stay up to date with our new videos.